You know, if you hold a ruler right above someone's open hand and just drop it without warning, it takes a surprisingly long time for them to actually pinch their fingers together and catch it.
Oh yeah, it really does.
Even if you're like hyper-focused, looking right at the ruler and expecting the drop, you are still looking at a delay of at least 200 to 300 milliseconds before your fingers even move. And I mean, in the world of neuroscience, that is an absolute eternity.
Right, and the reason for that delay is purely geographical.
Okay, geographical how?
Well, that visual signal of the falling ruler has to travel from your eyes all the way up into the visual cortex at the very back of your brain.
Wow, so the whole length of the head.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then the brain has to consciously process what it's seeing, make a decision to act, formulate a specific motor plan for the fingers, and then send that command all the way back down the spinal cord to your hand.
So it's a huge trip.
It is a massive biological commute. And, every single synapse that the signal crosses just adds processing time.
Today on The Deep Dive, we are using a stack of medical textbooks, historical research papers, and Nobel Prize-winning studies to figure out how your body beats that 300 millisecond delay.
Because there is a way around it.
Yeah, we are unpacking the ultimate biological speed hack today. We're talking about the reflex arc. Because a true reflex is not just a fast reaction. A reflex bypasses conscious thought entirely, operating in mere tens of milliseconds.
This is incredible.
Okay, let's unpack this. I like to think about it like a massive corporation.
Oh, I like this analogy.
Right. So if a reaction is a slow bureaucratic decision, like a problem on the factory floor that has to be reported all the way up to corporate headquarters in the brain, discussed by executives, and then a directive is sent back down.
Which takes forever.
Exactly. A reflex arc, on the other hand, is an emergency protocol. It is executed instantly by the local manager on the ground, which in this case is your spinal cord or your brainstem.
And corporate HQ doesn't even know it happened until after the crisis has already been averted.
They just get the memo later.
Pretty much. Yeah. And, this isn't just about why your knee jerks at the doctor's office when they hit it with the hammer. We are looking at a foundational biological mechanism here.
It's universal.
Basically, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is a survival circuit that has evolved in essentially every single animal with a centralized nervous system.
Yeah.
It's designed to handle sudden, unpredictable threats in the environment where, honestly, milliseconds mean the difference between life and death.
So to understand how this local manager pulls off that emergency protocol, I think we need to look at the hardware in a real-world scenario.
Let's do it.
Let's say you're walking barefoot in your kitchen, half asleep in the dark, and you step on a stray tack.
Ouch.
Right, but you don't have to think, oh goodness, that's sharp, I should probably lift my foot. You pull your foot away before you consciously register the pain.
The architecture making that possible is a highly specific 5-step neural pathway.
5 steps, okay.
Yeah. So in your kitchen scenario, the very first thing that happens is the scout on the ground detects the physical threat. Right. The pain receptors in your skin, specifically the nociceptors, fire off a distress signal.
So the receptor is step 1.
Exactly. And that receptor instantly triggers the second component, which is the sensory neuron, also known as the afferent neuron.
Afferent with an A.
Yes. Think of this as the inward-bound wire. It carries the distress signal away from the foot, rushing it up your leg toward the central nervous system at speeds that can actually exceed 200 miles per hour.
That is absurdly fast. But it doesn't go to the brain. It goes to the local manager's office.
Right. It hits the gray matter of the spinal cord. And this is our third step, the integration center.
The integration center. Okay.
Inside the spinal cord, that incoming signal is processed. For a withdrawal reflex, like pulling your foot away from attack, the signal actually passes through middlemen called interneurons.
Interneurons.
Because it uses multiple synapses to connect everything inside the cord, this is known clinically as a polysynaptic arc. Poly meaning many.
Wait, hold on. Let me pause you there.
Sure.
If the spinal cord is just acting as a speedy relay station to save time, why does it need interneurons?
That's a good question.
I mean, why not just wire the incoming pain signal directly to the outgoing muscle command and save even more time? Cut out the middleman entirely.
Well, because the local manager isn't just mindlessly flinching,
Yeah.
It has to orchestrate a really complex, coordinated response across multiple muscle groups.
Oh, I see.
So the interneurons, they act as a routing system. They take that single incoming pain signal and they distribute it to the exact configuration of motor neurons that are needed to flex your specific leg muscles and safely yank your foot away.
Okay, so that outgoing command travels down the fourth component, the motor neuron, also called the efferent neuron, right?
Effort with an E, yes.
Which finally reaches the effector, which is step 5. That's the actual muscle in the thigh or the calf that violently contracts to pull your foot into the air.
You've got it.
So receptor, sensory neuron, integration center, motor neuron, effector muscle. That makes total sense.
It's an elegant system.
But looking at the biomechanics in these sources, here's where it gets really interesting to me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because if you instantly yank one foot up into the air while you're walking forward in the kitchen, I mean, physics dictates you should immediately fall over and faceplant into the counter.
You absolutely would, yeah.
Yeah.
If your spinal cord wasn't performing a secondary piece of active computation in the dark.
The crossed extensor reflex.
Yes. At the exact same millisecond that those inner neurons tell your injured leg to flex and pull away, they actually route a mirror image command down your opposite leg.
That is so wild.
It really is. It commands the uninjured leg to suddenly extend, stiffen, and brace itself. It is actively preparing that leg to bear your entire body weight as your center of gravity suddenly shifts.
So the spinal cord is doing complex whole-body postural computation, coordinating multiple limbs before the pain signal has even finished its commute up to your conscious brain.
It's multitasking at the highest level.
It reminds me of the automatic braking system in a modern car.
Oh, how so?
Well, the sensors detect an impending crash, right? And the car doesn't just hit the brakes.
Yeah.
It tightens the seatbelts, it braces the suspension, and prepares for impact, all before the driver even fully realizes what they're looking at out the windshield.
That analogy perfectly captures why polysynaptic arcs are so vital.
They handle the big problems.
They do. They allow for sophisticated, life-saving adjustments on the fly. The spinal cord isn't just some dumb relay cable, you know.
Yeah.
It's a highly capable processing center handling multivariable problems.
Okay, so polysynaptic arcs handle these complex multi-limb emergencies. But earlier you mentioned that every synapse a signal has to cross adds processing time.
Right, it does.
So if the ultimate goal of a reflex is speed, evolution must have found a way to eliminate those middlemen in certain scenarios, right?
Evolution absolutely did solve for that. And it actually resulted in the most famous reflex in the world.
The knee jerk.
Exactly. A reflex that skips the inner neurons entirely to maximize speed. The patellar reflex, commonly known as the knee jerk.
The classic doctor's office test.
Yeah, it's the classic textbook demonstration. It was formally described in the clinical literature way back in 1875 by two German neurologists, Wilhelm Erb and Carl Friedrich Otto Westphal.
Okay, so picture this for me. You're sitting on the exam table, your legs are dangling, and the doctor taps you just below the kneecap with that little rubber hammer. Physically, like on a cellular level, what is happening in that exact millisecond?
Okay, so the hammer strike pushes on the patellar tendon, and that abruptly yanks on the quadriceps muscle in your thigh, physically stretching it.
Okay.
Now, embedded inside that muscle are specialized stretch receptors called muscle spindles.
Muscle spindles, got it.
When they get suddenly stretched by the hammer, they fire a rapid signal along the sensory neuron straight into the L2 to L4 segments of your spinal cord.
And rather than stopping at an interneuron to process,
The sensory neuron synapses directly onto the motor neuron,
just one connection.
one single junction. That is why it is called a monosynaptic arc. Mono meaning one.
That is incredibly efficient.
It is. That motor neuron instantly fires back to the quadriceps, demanding it contract, which violently kicks your leg forward.
So what's the evolutionary purpose of that? I mean, doctors with hammers weren't exactly chasing early humans on the savannah.
Right, no. It is a pure stabilization mechanism. In the wild, if you stepped on uneven ground and your knee suddenly started to buckle, this ultra-fast circuit would snap your leg straight before you could even fall over.
Wow. You know, a lot of people read about the knee jerk and assume all reflexes are simple, one synapse loops like that.
Oh, all the time. It's a huge misconception.
But the sources point out this is actually the exception, not the rule. The vast majority of our reflexes involve those interneurons doing the complex routing we talked about earlier.
Yes, the extreme simplicity of the knee jerk makes it uniquely fast, but it's a highly specialized circuit for maintaining posture against gravity. It's definitely not the standard template for all automatic behavior.
Which actually raises a question for me regarding modern medicine.
Sure, what is it?
We have functional MRI machines today. We have advanced neurological imaging that can look right inside a living spinal cord in high definition.
I do.
Why on earth are doctors in the 21st century still walking around with little rubber hammers tapping on people's knees? I mean, it seems archaic.
I know it seems that way, but that monosynaptic simplicity is clinically invaluable.
Really? How so?
Because when a doctor taps your knee, they aren't just checking if your leg kicks. They are testing the exact, specific integrity of a highly localized piece of neurological hardware.
Because it skips the interneurons.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because the patellar reflex relies on just one single synapse located precisely at the L2 to L4 spinal segments, the response tells a vivid diagnostic story.
Oh, so it's a hyper-specific diagnostic test.
Yes. If the reflex is completely absent or if it is wildly exaggerated and hyperactive, the doctor instantly knows there is a problem.
Like what kind of problem?
Could be peripheral nerve damage, maybe a herniated disc, or even upper spinal cord compression. And they know it's happening in that exact neurological neighborhood.
That's amazing.
It saves an immense amount of time and money localizing the issue before anyone even has to schedule an expensive MRI.
It's like pinging a single server to see if it's online before you take apart the whole data center.
That is exactly what it's like.
I want to shift gears, though, because looking at the history in these sources, I'm stuck on something.
What's that?
If these reflexes operate entirely under the radar of our conscious minds, if they are happening before we even know they are happening, how did early scientists even figure out they existed as separate mechanisms from conscious thought?
The history here is a fascinating collision of philosophy and biology. I love when those two intersect.
Me too. So, in the 17th century, René Descartes proposed that sensory animal spirits flowed through hollow nerve tubes in the body.
Animal spirits, right.
He imagined these spirits traveling from, say, a foot near a fire up to the brain and reflecting back down to the muscles to pull the foot away, all mechanically, without the conscious will of the soul. Obviously, the anatomy was completely wrong. Nerves aren't hollow tubes, and they certainly don't operate on hydraulic pressure with spirits.
No, they don't. But Descartes introduced a revolutionary concept.
Which was?
That some biological behaviors are purely automatic and mechanical, entirely distinct from voluntary conscious action. The soul, or the conscious mind, wasn't required for every movement.
But proving that biologically took a couple of centuries, right?
It did.
Marshall Hall's experiments in the 1830s really caught my eye in these sources. And honestly, reading his methodology, it's a mix of clinical brilliance and just absolute horror.
Yeah, the decapitated frogs.
Yes, he was working with decapitated frogs and snakes.
Hall wanted to see what the spinal cord could do completely isolated from the brain.
Right.
So he showed that if you applied an irritant, like a drop of mild acid, to the skin of a decapitated frog, the frog wouldn't just twitch randomly.
Which is what you'd expect, right?
Right, but it didn't. It would raise its hind leg and deliberately wipe the acid off its skin in a coordinated, purposeful manner.
Just picture how deeply unsettling this must have been for 19th century society.
Oh, it caused an uproar.
I mean, you have a completely headless creature executing what looks like a deliberate survival-based action. Doesn't that completely destroy the idea that all intelligent, purposeful action requires a conscious mind to direct it?
That was the massive controversy of his time. Hall's experiments were a direct challenge to vitalist ideas.
Vitalism. Okay, remind me what that is.
Vitalism was the prevailing scientific and philosophical belief that a mystical life force, or a conscious soul, was fundamentally required for any coordinated biological activity.
And Hall's frogs blew that out of the water.
Completely. Hall proved definitively that the spinal cord alone, just as a mechanical piece of wetware, could orchestrate complex behavior without a head.
And then Sir Charles Scott Sherrington comes along at the turn of the 20th century and maps out how that wetware actually works.
Yes, Sherrington spent decades studying spinal reflexes. In 1906, he published his findings, proving that reflex arcs are built from chains of discrete neurons.
The guy literally named the synapse.
He did. He coined the term synapse for the microscopic gaps between those neurons.
And he borrowed from Greek roots meaning to clast together, with the help of a classicist colleague, which I just love.
It's a great historical footnote.
Right. A neurobiologist asking his literature buddy to help him name one of the most important structures in human biology.
Classic academia. But, Sherrington didn't just name the synapse. He changed how we understand it entirely.
How so?
Well, he won a share of the 1932 Nobel Prize for proving that reflexes aren't just electrical wires passively conducting current.
Okay.
He showed that synapses are sites of active neural computation.
Active computation?
Yes. Excitatory signals and inhibitory signals converge in these junctions. They're constantly competing to influence the motor neuron. The local manager is actively computing the best response. It's just doing it entirely below the level of conscious awareness.
Hold on, though. We keep using the term local manager and talking about the spinal cord operating independently. But I'm looking at the sources on cranial reflexes, and I see a pretty glaring contradiction here.
Oh, let's hear it.
You just defined a reflex as skipping the brain entirely to save time. But some of these reflexes go straight into the midbrain. Isn't that, the brain?
That is a very common misconception. The defining feature of a reflex isn't no brain involved.
It's not.
No, the defining feature is no conscious cortical decision-making.
Meaning it doesn't involve the cerebral cortex.
Exactly. The highly evolved, wrinkled outer layer of the brain where our conscious thinking and deciding happens. But it absolutely can involve the lower, older, unconscious parts of the brain.
Okay, that clarifies it.
The pupillary light reflex is the perfect example of this.
Oh, I've had this done at the eye doctor.
We all have. If a doctor shines a bright little flashlight into your eye, your pupil instantly shrinks to protect the delicate retina from taking in too much light.
Right.
The pathway for this reflex doesn't go anywhere near your spinal cord.
It goes straight back into the skull.
Yes. The light-sensitive cells in your retina send a signal along the optic nerve directly into the midbrain.
The midbrain, okay.
And the midbrain processes that signal and relays it back out along the oculomotor nerve to constrict the iris sphincter muscles.
So that entire loop happens anatomically inside your head.
In the brainstem, yes. But because it completely bypasses the cortex, you have absolutely no conscious control over it. It's a true involuntary reflex.
Now, the sources mention something called the consensual response here, which I find totally fascinating.
Oh, the consensual response is incredible.
So if you shine a light into just one eye, the pupil in the other eye, the one that's still in the dark, it also shrinks.
It does.
Why on earth does the untested eye react?
Because of bilateral brainstem pathways.
Bilateral meaning both sides.
Exactly. When that light signal hits the integration center in the midbrain, the circuitry doesn't just send a motor command back to the illuminated eye, it actually splits the signal.
Wow.
It sends the command down the oculomotor nerves on both sides of your head simultaneously.
So again, doctors are using a simple reflex as a massive diagnostic shortcut.
Absolutely. If a doctor shines a light in your right eye and your right pupil constricts but your left pupil doesn't, that missing consensual response instantly localizes the damage.
They know exactly where to look.
They know exactly where the communication breakdown is occurring in the cranial pathways, all without the patient having to utter a single word.
Up to this point, we've painted a picture of reflexes as this incredible automatic hardware. 5 strict steps, predictable pathways, exact outputs.
Very mechanical.
Right. But if reflexes bypass conscious thought entirely, are we just biological robots?
That's the big philosophical question.
Are we trapped by immutable, hardwired circuitry that just plays out the exact same way every single time?
Well, early physiologists firmly believed that. They thought of reflexes as a rigid linear chain. Specific stimulus in, identical response out every single time.
It makes sense they would think that.
But the philosopher John Dewey pushed back on this in a famous 1896 paper.
1896, wow.
Yeah, he argued that reducing behavior to a rigid stimulus and response chain was a massive oversimplification. He suggested that sensation and motion are functionally unified in a constant adaptive loop.
Dewey was essentially arguing that our hardware is tunable.
Exactly.
But his argument was purely philosophical at the time, right? I mean,
Yeah.
to actually prove that our biological hardware is adaptable, someone had to crack open a nervous system and watch a reflex change in real time.
And that didn't happen until a researcher named Eric Kandel started poking sea slugs.
Sea slugs! I love this part of the research.
It's legendary. Eric Kandel actually shared the Nobel Prize in 2000 for his work on a large marine snail called Aplysia californica.
Aplysia.
And his experiments delivered the ultimate proof of neuroplasticity.
Which is what, exactly?
The revolutionary idea that even basic reflex arcs can be modified by experience.
Okay, so how did he prove it with a sea slug?
Well, Kandel looked at a very simple defensive reflex in this slug. If you touch its siphon, which is a small spout on its back, it instantly retracts its delicate gill to protect it.
Just a basic withdrawal reflex, like pulling your foot away from attack.
Exactly the same principle. But Kandel discovered that if you gently touch the siphon over and over again with no negative consequences, the reflex physically weakens.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the slug stops retracting the gill as much. This is called habituation. The reflex basically learns to ignore a harmless, repetitive stimulus.
It tunes it out.
Right. On the flip side, If you pair that gentle touch with a mild electrical shock elsewhere on the slug's body, the exact opposite
He
happens.
reacts more.
The reflex becomes dramatically stronger. A tiny, gentle touch will suddenly cause a massive, violent gill retraction.
Wow.
That's called sensitization. But the profound part isn't just the behavioral change, it's how Candle explained the molecular mechanism behind it.
He looked at the actual synapses.
Yes, Candle traced these behavioral changes down to lasting physical alterations in the synapses between specific identified neurons.
The hardware itself is changing.
Structurally changing. During habituation, the sensory neuron actually releases fewer neurotransmitters into the synapse. The physical connection weakens.
And during sensitization.
During sensitization, a cascade of molecular events involving calcium channels and serotonin causes the sensory neuron to release significantly more neurotransmitters. It fundamentally strengthens the connection.
So it's not just a philosophical concept. The hardware structurally changes based on the slug's environment.
He proved that even the most deeply automatic circuits in the nervous system participate in learning. The physical reflex arc is fundamentally a physical form of memory.
Now, I need to jump in here to clarify something, because when people hear words like tunable reflexes and adapting to touch, it is very easy to slide into pseudoscience.
Oh, definitely.
Does this biological plasticity have anything to do with reflexology?
Oh, boy.
You know, the practice of massaging specific zones on your foot to allegedly heal your liver or improve kidney function, because they use the word reflex.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because we must firmly debunk that right now.
Let's do it.
Reflexology borrows the scientific vocabulary of reflex physiology, but it has absolutely zero basis in actual reflex arc anatomy.
Zero.
Zero. Massaging a specific spot on your foot does not trigger a neural arc to your liver. They share the word reflex, but they are completely, entirely unrelated concepts.
So it's just a pseudoscientific misapplication of the word.
Exactly. Foot reflexology is just a foot massage.
Okay, good to know. But if we want a legitimate example of tuning reflexes in mammals, we should look at Ivan Pavlov's classical conditioning, right?
Precisely.
You know, ringing a bell and pairing it with food to trigger an unconditioned reflex like salivation.
Yes. Pavlov demonstrated genuine, measurable reflex plasticity. That is actual science.
Okay, that makes total sense. So bringing this all together, what we've unpacked today is that a reflex is an ancient 5-step survival circuit.
Receptor, sensory neuron, integration center, motor neuron, and effector.
Right, and it buys us precious milliseconds by cutting the conscious cortical brain completely out of the loop.
Functioning as a site of active computation entirely outside of our awareness.
And its modern medical relevance continues to evolve, right? Doctors use these specific arcs every day to precisely map nervous system damage.
Yes, but beyond diagnostics, researchers are currently investigating ways to train patients to consciously upregulate or downregulate specific spinal reflexes.
Oh, like for rehab.
Yes. They are using Candle's concept of plasticity as a potential rehabilitation tool after spinal cord injuries. They're actively trying to reshape circuits that we once assumed were permanently rigidly fixed.
That is incredible. You know, we started this deep dive talking about the local manager stepping in to execute emergency protocols without telling corporate headquarters.
They did.
But based on the plasticity we just discussed, I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder today.
Lay it on us.
If even our most deeply ingrained, completely automatic physical reflexes can be fundamentally altered, strengthened, or unlearned through experience, how much of what you consider your innate natural responses to the world are actually just well-practiced physical habits? Habits that your spinal cord learned, perfected, and locked away, all without ever asking for your permission.